it's Cass. Welcome back to my channel, What Cass Read. Today I'm bringing you my much anticipated spoiler-free review of City of Brass, written by S.A. Chakraborty. So let's go. Alright, so The City of Brass is a fantasy novel. I would actually classify this as a new adult fantasy novel that takes place in 18th century Cairo. It follows a young woman named Nari, and she has grown up on the streets of Cairo. She's actually a con artist. She cons people because she's trying to actually raise enough money for herself so that way she can go to school to become a doctor. So she has very noble cause behind why she's conning people, but she's still conning them nevertheless. So one day when she's running a scam, she is performing this like healing ritual on people, and she does actually possess a little bit of magic inside of her, but she doesn't quite understand what it is. She knows she can use it to heal people, but she hasn't ever explored what this magic is, where it comes from, and while she's performing this ceremony, she accidentally summons essentially a demon, but she also summons a thousands-year-old Jinn warrior named Dara. And because of this summoning, because this demon and because this Jinn warrior both recognize that she has some untapped power, she becomes embroiled into the world of the Jinn. Dara decides to flee with her to the Jinn city of Davidabad for her safety, and then the story takes off from there. So for the world building for this book, it takes place in an 18th century Middle Eastern, African, Indian inspired world. We start off in Cairo, but as Nari gets more embroiled in the world of the Jinn, she does get taken into the city of Davidabad, which is the titular city of Brass, and it is the city of the Jinn, and that's where we get to experience so much more of this like super rich, heavily cultured, beautiful magic city. Basically, once Nari gets embroiled in with the world of the Jinn, that's when, you know, the world becomes just so enveloped and magical. There's magic carpets, there's rich, beautiful colors, there's magical creatures, there's new languages that she's learning, which is one of her powers. And when we get to Davidabad, there is also a very real class war happening between the full-blooded Jinn and the mixed-blooded Jinn mixed with humans named the Shafit, and Nari gets thrown into the middle of all of this. S.A. Chakraborty's writing to describe Davidabad is you're just using all five senses. You know, you can taste, you can see, you can smell everything that's going on in the city, you can feel the tension. I have knocked off some points for different books before where I felt like I didn't get enough of the history behind why there was tension in the city, and I really felt that within Davidabad, so I think S.A. Chakraborty did an amazing job setting all of that up, because she drew upon historical references, not only from, you know, history, but also recent history, you know, within the Middle East, within India, within Africa. She's drawing upon all of those references to help craft the tension inside of the city of Davidabad and the Jinn peoples. This is a book that also does have a magic system in place, but it's not anything that is something that needs to be described. It's not super complex. It's just magic is a part of the world, and so as Nari learns more and more about the world, she begins tapping more and more into her powers. Different tribes within the Jinn have different skill sets and different powers, and her power is one such that it's thought to have been dead, it's thought to have died out, you know, this pure-blooded family power has thought to have died out, and so that also builds into the tension of the story. S.A. Chakraborty did an impeccable job, and it was one of my favorite parts about the book. So there are a couple characters that we should talk about when talking about the City of Brass. So of course Nari is our main character, that's who we first meet. She's a younger woman, probably in her 20s, who is very self-sufficient. She is independent because she had to be. She grew up on the streets of Cairo. She has never known her family, and, you know, her con woman lifestyle developed because she had to survive. As she learns about her place inside Davidabad and what is she really doing there, she's invested in her survival from jump, and so when she gets brought into Davidabad, those survival skills are sort of taking place. You know, she can never fully shake off her mentality of treating people as marks, treating people as someone that she's going to con, and she's constantly thinking on the back burner, okay, who's trying to con me? A lot of her independent upbringing does begin to clash with a lot of the different characters, and she's been really fun. She was my least favorite of all the characters, to be honest, but that's because there's so many great characters in here that I just fell in love with a lot of different people. The Jinn warrior that we meet, his name is Dara. He is also a super important figure in this world. He's a centuries-old Jinn warrior who, I like to see him as a guy who just likes to F shit up. He is a Jinn warrior with a very complex history. As a matter of fact, he would hate if we described him as a Jinn warrior, for he is a Deva, which the city of Devabad, they took the name from. He is arrogant, but he's very talented, and so he has the talent to kind of back up his arrogance. He's very hot-headed, and so you would imagine that him and Nari do tend to butt heads. They're also very secretive with one another, and that tends to cause some tension among them. And then there is also Prince Ali, which I can't help but think about Aladdin when I hear Prince Ali. I think Kitty G Books, Caitlin, was the first one to kind of bring that up, and I was like, I totally sing that song in my head too when I hear Prince Ali. But anyways, Prince Ali is the youngest prince of the King of Devabad. He was raised in the Citadel to become a warrior, and so he was not raised in the palace. He was raised out in the Citadel. He led a very militarized life. He is vastly different from the rest of his family in that he sympathizes with the oppressed peoples, the Shafit, inside Devabad. So he was really interesting to follow because of that inner conflict. He feels one way about his family, he feels one way about the Shafit. As these events play out in the book, he's very naive about a lot of things that are happening. So then that leads to him being susceptible to being played by a lot of people and their political desires. There's Ali's brother Muntadir, there's his father, and just when I think each character is like super basic and I know them one way, S.A. Chakraborty did a really beautiful job of just creating really three-dimensional characters. For instance, his brother Muntadir seems like he would be that typical spoiled firstborn, raised to be king, grew up in the lap of luxury, but he has a dark side to him, he has a seriousness to him, and I really enjoyed the scenes between Muntadir and Ali. Like, this whole book, world building, characters, everything provided a really fresh approach to fantasy, and I had a good time with it. So overall, I rated this book 4 stars. It read a little young to me, that's why I would classify it as new adult. I didn't think it was totally young adult, I didn't think it was totally adult. It also did read still a little bit westernized to me. And I think that's just my personal, what I'm looking for in some of my fantasy these days. I was really hoping for an author from this region of the world to be able to bring a fantasy novel to life. So this still did read a little bit Western to me. The plot, it really hooks you in. The magic is, like I said, three-dimensional. You're using all 5 of your senses, and it's an easy world to get lost in. The middle section of the book ran a little bit slow, and then it builds up to like the big payoff at the end. Now the big payoff is absolutely worth it. This ending to the book, I think anyone who has read this book can agree with me. The ending was superb. It left me really excited, on the edge of my seat for the next book. Overall, this book was a huge success of a debut novel. I'm really glad that I read it. I picked it up, it was a book of the month club pick for me. Like I said, it was just a really enjoyable, fresh take on fantasy. 4 out of 5 stars. Alright, so that wraps up my spoiler-free review of City of Brass, written by S.A. Chakraborty. Please leave any comments in the comment section below what you thought of it, if you've read it, or if you haven't read it, what are you most excited about it? And you can follow me on my social media, Instagram and Twitter. It's at WhatCastRead. It's the same as this channel, so it's super easy to find. You can also find me on Goodreads. That link is always down below, so we can chat about this book if you have other things that you want to talk about with me. Otherwise, you know how these videos end. I'll talk to you later. Bye.